Hello and welcome to today's webinar, brought to you in partnership with Salesforce and Trustpilot. We're going to be exploring a topic that feels especially timely at the moment, building customer trust in the age of AI. With so much discussion about AI, what it means for businesses, what it means for consumers, trust has never felt more important. Our aim today is to go beyond the headlines and share some practical ideas grounded in real tools, real insights, and real consumer journeys. Let's begin by meeting our speakers. First, we're joined by Lucas Fernström, who leads Northern Europe region at Salesforce for Agentforce. Lucas will be sharing how businesses can take real customer feedback and turn it into meaningful action across the customer journey. Lucas, do you want to say a quick hello?
Yeah, absolutely. That's right. I have the pleasure of leading a team of specialists focused on Agentforce, which is Salesforce AI platform, and really excited to be talking to you today.
Awesome. We're also joined by Taylor Flynn, Commercial Director at Creditfix. Taylor will be walking us through a brilliant case study a little later, showing how Creditfix have used reviews, technology and segmentation to build trust with customers in a complex and sensitive space. Taylor, over to you for a quick hello.
Thank you, Carrie. Hi, everyone. Taylor Flynn, Commercial Director at the UK Debt Expert Group. And for those that don't know, we are a business that help customers manage their debt, whether that's from advice to solutions. We deal with everything. The brand obviously mentioned here is Creditfix. That's our IVA brand, and that's we're the UK's largest IVA provider. 250,000 customers, and as you can see, we've worked quite hard to gather our Trustpilot reviews and to maintain them at 4.9 stars. What I'll be looking to take you through is show you an example and a case study, which will hopefully show you that we're not just committed to helping people manage debt, but we're looking to build trust, transparency, and personalized customer experiences.
Thanks both. So here's what we'll be covering in today's session. First, we're going to explore why trust matters now more than ever, particularly in the context of AI. Then we're going to look at how Trustpilot and Salesforce work together to help unify and strengthen the customer experience. And then finally, we'll bring it all together with the Creditfix case study, showing how these ideas come to life in the real world. So let's begin with the question that sits at the heart of all of this. It's a question we're all asking, often without even realizing it. What can I trust? It might be when we're buying something online, choosing a service, or simply reading the headlines. There's more information out there than ever before, and more of it now created by machines than people. That makes trust not just useful, but really essential. For customers, it's about confidence. Is this a brand I can rely on? And for businesses, it's the same question in reverse. Do our customers trust us? And how do we know? Because trust isn't just about belief. It's how we decide who to listen to, who to buy from, and who to come back to. Now let's turn to the business case. Because trust isn't just a principle, it's a key driver of performance. When people trust a brand, they're more likely to choose it, more likely to recommend it, and crucially, more likely to return. That's why 93% of business leaders now say that building and maintaining trust directly improves the bottom line. And the data backs that up. On average, around 40% of revenue comes from repeat customers, people who've had a good experience and want more of the same. But trust once lost is hard to win back. Nearly a third of customers say one bad experience is enough to make them walk away. So trust isn't a nice extra. It's what makes the relationship last, and it shows up directly in the numbers. And yet, despite all this, there's a gap. A recent study found that 90% of business leaders believe their customers trust them. But when customers were asked, only 30% agreed. That's a striking mismatch, and it suggests that many brands may be assuming trust that hasn't really been earned. At the same time, expectations are rising. 7 in 10 people say that trust in the brands they use matters more now than it did in the past. So the challenge is a simple one to name, but a lot harder to solve. How do we close that trust gap? And how do we stay ahead of it? So I'll hand over to Lucas now to talk a little bit about what that looks like in the age of AI. Lucas.
Well, thank you, Carrie. I couldn't agree more. I mean, Salesforce, we've been around since '99, and our number one value has always been trust. And that started off with us saying that companies needed to trust us with their data to be put in the cloud. But today, trust is even more impacted by the ever-evolving landscape of AI. And as you all know, we're already in the midst of AI. So how do we ensure trust, even though we have AI-generated content, maybe deep fakes, or even the teachers don't know how to trust the assignments are left in school? The fact is that almost 75% of the UK consumers believe that the rapid changes in AI makes trust even more important than it has been before. And almost 78% of businesses are using AI, and that whole marketplace is rapidly increasing and looking to be worth almost like 250 billion this year, right? So it's an extremely important aspect to think about. So if we move ahead again, the truth is, if we're not keeping up, we're going to fall behind because consumers are already expecting us to take care of it. So how can you proactively build seamless customer experiences with trust in mind? Now, that's the real question. And to begin to reiterate what that question really means is to say that this goes beyond just sales and profit. The true impact lies in that true customer experience. And as we heard Carrie say, consumers judge brands on quality, timelines, and experiences, and not just the product or service that we're delivering. And customers are 2.5 times more likely to be loyal when we solve their problems quickly. And once again, that's where AI can play a huge, huge role. How can reviews help drive better customer experiences, Carrie?
Great question, Lucas. Well, in a world of choice and complexity, reviews often act as a kind of shortcut, a signal. They help people feel more confident in the decisions that they're about to make. But they don't just influence behavior. They shape how people experience a brand both before and after they buy. And the data tells a really clear story. For UK consumers, reviews are now a natural and expected part of the shopping journey. 89% say that star ratings and reviews influence which products or services they choose. And 82% say that a strong Trustpilot score makes them more likely to trust a brand. So reviews are no longer just a post-purchase feature. They're part of how people decide who they want to engage with in the first place. And at a time when trust is harder to earn, this kind of transparency carries real weight. But reviews aren't only useful for building trust. They're also incredibly effective in marketing. They bring authenticity to campaigns, they give customers a voice, and they often perform better than traditional advertising on its own. Done well, they turn satisfied customers into brand advocates, and they help new customers feel reassured. It's word of mouth at scale. And it's one thing to know that reviews drive trust, but the real opportunity comes when you integrate that trust signal across your entire customer journey. That's exactly what Creditfix has done, and the results have been very powerful. By using Trustpilot reviews throughout their web experience, paid campaigns, and customer touchpoints, they've seen real uplift. And just to share a few figures, 93% of review-related searches result in a Trustpilot profile. So that's often the first brand impression. They saw a 23% increase in online conversions simply by featuring Trustpilot content on site. And ads with a trust score or review content Well, they were 34 times more likely to be clicked than those without. But what's really impressive is how they've used reviews as part of a much wider strategy, one that's carefully built around where someone is on their financial journey. So to tell us a little bit more about how that works in practice, I'm really pleased to hand over to Taylor from Creditfix.
Thank you, Carrie. Yeah, I think there'll be a lot of marketers, business owners listening to this who will always be going about saying, I optimize my marketing funnels, I optimize every element of my business. I think the big thing with Trustpilot and Salesforce, it's not just optimize, how do you humanize as the digital journey as well? I think that's one of the big things that we've looked at. It's not just automation for efficiency, it's about using the data to tell stories that feel real and relevant. I think taking every opportunity with a customer to go, what's their bare minimum expectation? Can we meet that? But how can we excite them? How can we give them something new? That's the opportunity that you get in this. I think you'll see in the slide we're on now, our use of AI and automation through Salesforce and utilizing Trustpilot. That's helped us scale our support, match the right advisors, and surface the most impactful Trustpilot reviews relative to the customer journey. And a bit later on, I'll take you through some of the examples of that, which will hopefully give some people some inspiration and some ideas of how they can further optimize and humanize their digital journeys.
I love that phrase, Taylor. I mean, how do we humanize the customer journey in this age of AI? It's this real challenge, right, between humans and AI, and how you bridge that chasm and bring them together in service of the customer and leading with empathy. So look forward to hearing more about that a little bit later. So far, we've seen how reviews help build trust and drive performance. But to really scale that impact, we need the right systems working behind the scenes. That's where the integration between Trustpilot and Salesforce comes in. Together, they allow businesses to connect authentic customer feedback with the systems they already use to manage journeys, automate responses, and personalize experiences. It means insight doesn't just sit in the background, it becomes part of how you operate. So it's not just about collecting feedback, it's about using it in real time, in the right place, and with the right outcome. When you bring these two platforms together, you get something greater than the sum of its parts. Trustpilot gives you the voice of the customer, open, honest, and real. It shows you what people are saying and where their expectations sit. Salesforce gives you the structure to act on it, whether that's updating journeys, personalizing messages, or resolving problems before they become issues. It's a loop, insight in, action out. And over time, that loop builds stronger experiences, deeper loyalty, and more sustainable growth. And it's worth taking a moment to consider the scale of the Trustpilot ecosystem. There are now over 301 million reviews on the platform. A new review is submitted every second. And with 47 million monthly visitors, Trustpilot sits firmly in the top 1% of websites globally. That makes it one of the most visible trust signals on the internet and a powerful platform for building credibility at speed. But more importantly, this isn't just about visibility. It's about giving real customers a voice and helping businesses listen, understand, and respond. Because when that feedback is used well, it becomes a catalyst for improvement, not just in marketing or messaging, but across the entire customer experience. And that brings us to the next part of the story, how businesses can take that insight and turn it into meaningful action. To walk us through how Salesforce helps make that happen, I'll hand back over to you, Lucas.
Well, thank you, Carrie. I mean, I think everyone online now agrees that trust is incredibly important. So how do you operationalize that? Well, with the deep integration between Trustpilot and Salesforce, you're able to get those automatically triggered campaigns or activities based on your consumers' behaviors. If that is the fact that someone has purchased a product or someone has been reading up upon your services, thanks to that integration, Salesforce can not only help you gain more reviews on Trustpilot, but it can also help you respond to them, because we all know sometimes we don't deliver quite the product or service that we want. And then it's important to be able to respond to those reviews online as well. And Salesforce helps you operationalize all of those touch points with the customer, thanks to that integration. And how does this actually look then? How does this work? Well, I'm not going to give you a full-blown demo today, but I do want to give you a sneak peek of how this actually looks in reality. So by automatically collecting all of that feedback that we can get through the Trustpilot platform, we can easily understand how these things, how people are viewing our products and services. So this can be when someone has fulfilled an order, we can automatically review it and send them a rating for us on Trustpilot. Now, if we've delivered a service, we can automatically send them a feedback survey after we've closed that case. Or maybe even if we've won a deal in a B2B context, we might want to hear back from that customer and ask them to review us on Trustpilot as well. But the beauty of all of these, no matter the scenario or no matter the type of business you run, you set up these connections and flows once, and then they automatically run in the background, which allows you to capitalize on these investments that you've made both in Salesforce and in Trustpilot, because you'll make it more seamless. Now, it's not only about getting those reviews and responding to them, but it's also important that you are able to analyze and make sense of it. So we can leverage the integration between Trustpilot and Salesforce to understand what our trust score is, to understand which people need to take action or who needs to review it. And you can leverage all of your pre-built elements in Salesforce thanks to this deep integration with Trustpilot. So Salesforce CRM essentially allows us to take real action on the reviews that we're collecting on Trustpilot. And the truth is, reviews don't only build trust, they actually help us to do more business. Because with this integration, you have the ability to pull in your 5-star reviews, for example, straight into the Marketing Cloud campaign engine to boost your email performance, for example. Because we all know user-generated content hits the right note if it's served at the right time with our customers. You can even equip your sales teams with real customer quotes and follow up on proposals thanks to the information that we collect with Trustpilot. You can show live reviews on your e-commerce pages and build confidence with your shoppers at checkout. All of these are examples of how we can operationalize the value of these customer reviews through the Salesforce platform that you leverage to meet your customers on a daily basis. So I think I'll hand it back to Carrie and Taylor to talk about this story from a real life example.
Thank you, Lucas. I mean, a great example of kind of the integration between Salesforce and Trustpilot and how that works in practice. We've really seen kind of how powerful it can be when you take real customer insight, often gathered through something as simple and honest as a review, and connect it to the systems that drive action. A clear example of how trust isn't just something you measure, it's something that you can operationalize. So now to bring all of that to life, we're going to take a look at how it works in practice with a brand that's doing this every day. So I'm delighted to hand back to Taylor from Creditfix to walk us through how they've brought Trustpilot and Salesforce together to support customers, build trust, and deliver real results. So over to you, Taylor.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Yeah, I think everything we've touched on in regards to, how do you build the confidence? How do you get that emotional rapport? I think that's something, especially for our subject matter of debt. Again, as I mentioned, that was probably typically something that would have historically been done on the phone. So as users transitioned more to, automated journeys. How do you do that? And that's one of the challenges that we had. So what we looked to do was really take the opportunity with the Salesforce integration and Trustpilot to build trust from that first touch. And the way we've done that is we've very much looked to allow the customer to drive the journey. So the customer gives us factual information as part of our advice capture. So they will tell us what their debt concern is, what their debt level is, and what their most common debt type is. So we take all of that information, we map it to our Sales Cloud interface, and then we kind of go, right, how do we now take that information and turn it into something that we can action, whether we can action that in driving the customer to journey conclusion, or we can just take that opportunity to, again, get that rapport, get that emotive subject. So what we've done is we take our Trustpilot integration and use it in two ways, really. We look at it to, one, can we map our agents to reviews, which may be, for example, in this example, this expert just specializes in general concerns. So what that would be is, whether it be credit cards, store cards, all the different relevant information that we've captured, we've identified that this agent has an expertise across the majority. So they would kind of default to this journey where someone has maybe indicated general concerns or debt types other. So what we then do is we look to, on our kind of confirmation thank you page, whatever terminology you want to use, we want to match the user to the relevant expert that we think is going to specialize in the information that they've provided. So we straight away with that are building that confidence, we're getting the rapport, the customer is directly matched to someone that's going to match their need and match it with a level of expertise. What we then look to do is, from this, we can also then have AI chatbot that we've utilized. So how do we actually go and say, right, is the person at the point of they're ready for advice, or is there something in the information that they've given us that says, right, this person might be a bit reluctant to go that next step. They might be more likely to ask follow-up questions. So depending on what they've answered, we might actually put a persona in place of an expert and look to drive it that way. And then how that kind of evolves in the next stage is, as I mentioned, the omni-channel skill-based routing. So we would look to then put the user in touch with the right expert, but then that will follow through, in Lucas's example of how do you then leverage that in Marketing Cloud, for example. So all the information that we get on this initial form capture that we instantly utilize on the thank you page, we also continue to utilize them in our Marketing Cloud journey. So yeah, at every point possible, we look to relay confidence, relay emotive support. Again, in that subject matter of debt, it is highly emotive. So how exactly do we drive that? And that's one of the examples in which we've tried to do that. The next one was very much, how that all sounds great in terms of how we've utilized it. But I think one of the big things that we've seen in regards to straight away, as Lucas touched on, in terms of looking to drive people, to a purchase, or in our scenario, to an advice application, we've seen a higher conversion straight away within our marketing funnels, the utilization of the Trustpilot score, the embedding of relevance relative to the expert they're going to be speaking to. That all drives people, fundamentally, to go and fill in the form at a higher rate. What we've also seen, probably a good metric in regards to, have we built the trust? Have we engaged the customer in the right way? We've seen a reduced drop off. So what would typically happen in our funnel would be, at the point in which we've provided the customer with advice, they may select a debt solution. At that point, we would typically see a drop off where, again, relative to the subject matter, they just might second guess their purchase. But what we've seen with the rolling out of this model is we've seen a huge decrease in that. So we've seen better retention of our customers through to solution. And then thereafter, what we've then seen is, again, with one of the byproducts of this is We could introduce a refer a friend scheme, again with that level of confidence of people that we've managed to create brand advocacy with. We can then, after purchase, ask them to refer like-minded people into the same situation, that are in the same situation, to follow in the same way. So that's been a massive thing for us. And I think that one of the big things, we're talking about trust and everything with that. I think the big thing for us would be one of our takeaways is, the automation's great. I think if it can be used in the right way in terms of, our example of making debt advice more accessible. But I think actually what's often overlooked is you can actually use it to enhance empathy as well. I think one of the things that we see is we can get straight to the subject matter with a user a lot quicker, as opposed to maybe in the past, what we would have done is that person would have filled in the form and we haven't utilized the information as much, and then they may need to go on to a phone call. But what we can do with this, again, with the subject matter of debt, we can actually put people at ease and actually answer a lot more questions, give them a lot more support in regards to, we've listened to what you've told us and we've matched you with an expert based on those reasons. So I think, the relevance and, the trust that we're talking about, yeah, we have definitely seen that in action.
Taylor, it's such a powerful example, and really where trust is at the core of everything that you do. Could you talk a little bit about how Salesforce and Trustpilot work together, and how you've utilized those tools to kind of foster trust?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the big benefit is it's all centralized. I think the ability to map the reviews to your Salesforce instance. Again, in the example as I mentioned, we've mapped it so that we can see the reviews by our agents, we can see the reviews by debt types, we can see the reviews by debt levels, so we know of all our demographics, is there a difference in the makeup of that individual, and is that something that we need to utilize differently in journeys, whether that be the web journeys or whether that be the marketing cloud journeys. And I think that is probably one of the big amplifications, I think, in terms of when you utilize Salesforce, your trust journey and your kind of empathy creation journey goes so far beyond the web. You can take it onto your email. You can join up web journeys in terms of, for example, a lot of people listening to this will have, abandoned basket journeys, and I think that's one of the key ones that we utilize is, okay, if someone has come on, you believe you have built the trust, but even if you, for whatever reason, they don't act at any one individual uh, moment in time, you can then rebuild the trust in different ways. And I think people see that as a big benefit. I think, in the past where it was always might have been, rushed to the sale. I think now if you have trust in, what you're doing in terms of trying to build empathy and trying to build that sentiment, I think you can look to utilize that in a much smarter way, in a much user friendly way, and it really puts the customer at the heart of what you're doing.
Right. And Lucas said something earlier which I thought resonated a lot, which is this: you can never get it right all the time. There's always going to be times where a ball is dropped or where the experience could have been better. How do you respond when a customer shares a not perfect experience?
It's a big thing in terms of, what we look to do. We, as a business, in terms of, as you said, not all feedback is good, but all feedback is actionable for improvement or enhancement of what you're doing. So even at any point where we may have negative reviews, or someone has maybe left a review that, as you mentioned, that isn't perfect, what we would typically do is we would look to kind of extrapolate the journey in which that person has been on. Is that something that kind of resonates with a wider audience of people? And if it was, it's something that we would typically take away and go and say, right, okay, do we need to look at a slightly different UX on that journey? Do we need to do some testing as to how that could be amplified? Quite often what you find is, and I think, people want the truth, and they want to get to that as quickly as possible. So I think what you often find is, when that does happen, it's easily fixable. I find in most cases where, whether it just be, or another email needs to be sent just to, again, give that wee bit more confidence, or something wasn't explained in enough detail. Usually they're straightforward examples if you can just extrapolate the journey, or if you have to go and enhance it with some user testing. That's typically how we would get about it. But yeah, I would encourage everyone listening that, you know, even if you do get a review that isn't perfect, it's still something that you can action.
That's great, Taylor. Yeah, and would explain why Creditfix, I think, has a 4.9 rating on Trustpilot.
Yeah,
40,000 stars.
absolutely.
Something's going well. Could you talk a little bit, Taylor, about what's next for Creditfix, and you know, a little bit. You've got some visuals here on this slide, which I think a lot of folks will find very interesting. Kind of how you see this progressing next.
Yeah, I think the next step is, yeah, as you mentioned, the kind of further kind of scalability, the further enhancement of the automation. So I think the theme people will be getting as we go through this is a lot of the focus is how do we match the user with the expert. I think that's something that we'll continue to look to do. I think obviously a lot of people listening to this will probably be, you know, doing some user testing, looking at their user journey, and looking at, right, how do you utilize automation? Or do you explicitly call out that you're using automation, or, you know, do you go down kind of chatbot routes where, you know, that kind of the way that can be enhanced for people to think that's just an extension of the human interaction. I think what we've looked to do, and again from our user testing relative to, you know, if people are in a similar industry or sector to us where it can be quite a sensitive subject, we do see an advantage of explicitly calling out you're using AI, because I think what we find with debt is that might encourage people to seek advice who previously wouldn't. So I think that's a good example of utilizing the AI in a way which, okay, it's enhanced in efficiency, but it's also making it more accessible. It's appealing to an audience of people who would want an anonymity on, I think I'm in potentially need of a debt solution, but I don't know the extent of the problem. They might want to do the research, ask some questions before they go down the purchase route. So I think that's one of the things in terms of how do we just tweak how we utilize the AI. Again, looking to be conscious of how we use it in terms of, is it enhancing the customer journey in the right way? And if it is, yeah, we'll fully look to utilize it as a business, because yeah, we see a massive advantage of it. And I think hopefully people can see from these examples, you know, this is just literally customer centric, putting them at the center of it, and you know that can go a long way in terms of looking to build that rapport. Ultimately, you're looking to drive people to complete the form, but I think it's also, how do you get that brand advocacy? You know, for example, within our business, it's quite unique in terms of our engagement with the customer is for 5 years. So we need to constantly look to build that rapport and take the opportunities to surprise the customer in the journey. And I think that's, you know, one of the big things for marketers now is, you know, we can bring journeys to life. We can give people elements to a journey that they probably didn't expect. So I think, yeah, that gives us a massive opportunity of how we leverage this in a meaningful way.
It's fascinating, Taylor, and I think particularly how you're taking the review content and sentiment and you're linking that to individual advisors, and using that to kind of do the perfect matching. It's a very fascinating use of the data, and how you're operationalizing that at scale, and hopefully will be inspiring for those listening as to the art of the possible. How did you get started with this? Because this is obviously quite an advanced level of usage of the review platform alongside the unified customer journeys, but how did this all begin for you at Creditfix?
So I think the big thing for us, I think, you know, as Lucas probably touched on, I think the first use of Trustpilot was, how do we just bring our reviews into the kind of marketing funnel, and how do we just enhance that on page conversion? I think, you know, a lot of people listening will be doing that today, and I think that's something that is so powerful. I think, you know, from all the user testing that we've done throughout the years for our brand, that is always one that people just, as you can see from the example we have on screen, we put Trustpilot as the kind of first thing you see on our kind of landing page, confirmation page. It's because the trust that builds is massive. And I think it's just, I think the detail in which, especially if you're looking at the Salesforce integration, I think the thing I would encourage everyone to do is it's in the setup, it's the details in the setup. If you know, and in this example we did in terms of just mapping our funnel and then putting that into your Salesforce fields. Once you have that information in Salesforce, the way in which you can activate it in emails, you know, any call method you want to go and look at, I think that's what I would encourage people to do, is literally just look at your on-page conversion, and then what we would look to then do to kind of simplify it if you can, is then just, you know, that age-old 80-20 rule. Look at where you can focus in on your Trustpilot activity. Is there a particular audience that if I built trust and empathy with that audience, is that going to give me degrees of magnitude performance increases? That's what I would encourage people to do, is just focus on where you best place in your activity. And that's kind of what we've looked to do in terms of what are our kind of, whether it be from our paid activity, what's our best keywords, what's our best you know, social campaigns. They're the ones to focus on, and they're the ones to build trust with. And then once you've got trust in those key ones, then look to do it across your full audience base.
It's great practical advice, Taylor, but I think what comes through very clearly from this is just how much you're putting the customer at the center of everything you're doing, but also leading with empathy in a very complex and you know, sensitive field. So it's an extraordinary case example. Lucas, you do a lot of work on helping companies, you know, transform, put the customer at the center, unify customer journeys. You know, how much of this example from Creditfix is, you know, similar to the types of clients that you're working with, and what learnings do you have about how to get started on this journey?
No, I think Taylor and Creditfix is a brilliant example of a company that both centralizes their information around their customers and their products and their performance in one place in Salesforce. But naturally, Salesforce isn't enough. You need to leverage all of the insights that you can gain, if that's from Trustpilot or from your product or from your service. And I think that's a great example. Now, where should companies begin? Well, it really is around centralizing your information around your customers and your products, right? To get that into one place so that you're able to take action upon it. And we mentioned AI at the start of this session, right? And with AI, it's going to get even more increasingly important to have that single point of view of your customers and understand their behaviors so that you're able to serve them in the most optimal way. And thanks to AI, that's actually going to become even easier and quicker to do. And Salesforce, obviously, we have our product called Agentforce that can support you with that. But there's naturally more ways to get going. But for me, centralize that information around the customer so you're able to take action. That's the first step.
Great. And Lucas, you mentioned Agentforce there. Obviously, that is the topic of the day with Salesforce. How is Agentforce helping with this? And is this kind of a use case that you could envision for Agentforce?
Absolutely. I think Agentforce is a way to extend your human workforce. I think that's the simplest way to put it. So if that is to either allow you to become even more personalized, maybe based on the wording someone used in a review, right? To tailor the marketing message to that specific individual to make it act better. That's something an agent could help you with from Agentforce. Or if we end up with those situations where we do have room for improvement in delivering our service or product to a customer, an agent, a customer service agent, could support your human agents with that scalability, right? To answer maybe standardized issues or product concerns that your customers might have, or to help your customers get the right information to progress in their sales cycle. Agentforce really is an extension of your workforce to allow your employees, which is, I believe everyone agrees, your most important asset in your company, to allow them to focus on the most high value tasks that exist and let the agents take care of maybe the more mundane and repetitive tasks that you have out there. And that's really where we see tremendous efficiency gains with Agentforce today with our customers.
Yeah, it's a great example. I mean, well, one of the things that you touched on, which I think is powerful, is how reviews can actually help work in conjunction with Agentforce. And I think this is where we often see this dichotomy between humans and AI. And actually, someone once said it's not artificial intelligence, it's collective intelligence. It's how do we pull all of that extraordinary data and sentiment of learnings from humans over time and use that to train AI. And I think that's a really interesting use case on this, because Taylor, back to what you were saying, it's not AI for AI's sake, and in a very sensitive industry like you're working in, it's how do you put empathy at the forefront and use it in a sort of sensitive way that takes the voice of the customer into the applications.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're spot on. I think one of the big things for us has been, again, in our mission to build trust, transparency, personalized customer experiences. I think the big thing for us has always been how do we leverage the AI, to make debt advice more accessible. But I think we have definitely seen, even in the early stages we're in now, we still have seen that there's a high engagement where people do want that expert engagement, that human engagement. So I think it will come full circle in terms of enhance with automation, but I think it will the human relationships will definitely come to the forefront of that as well. Again, especially in something as emotive as debt, I think that's something that is going to be here to stay.
Great. Well, thank you both very much for that. We have the option to provide questions after this webinar, so please do submit and we will come back on those. So I want to bring things to a close. We've covered a lot of ground today. We began with a simple question, which is, what can I trust? And we've explored how that question plays out in today's world, where AI is reshaping how information is created, shared, and understood. We've seen the role that reviews play in helping people feel confident in their choices and in giving businesses the opportunity to listen, learn, and improve. We've looked at how platforms like Trustpilot and Salesforce help make that process not only possible, but practical, turning feedback into action and insight into real outcomes. And we've heard from Creditfix, showing how this can work in real life, with a clear focus on the customer and a commitment to doing things well. In the end, trust is something that's built piece by piece through what you say, what you do, and how you consistently show up. So whether you're just starting out or looking to deepen the trust you already have, we hope that today has given you a few ideas and perhaps a little inspiration. Thank you for joining us, and we hope to speak again soon.